You know, I've been around for a while. I've met some interesting people. Done some crazy things. So you'd think that there wasn't much that could take me by surprise. You'd be wrong. The world is full of stories and science and things that amaze and confound me every single day. Incredible mysteries that keep me awake at night. Some I can answer, and others just defy logic.
Can we see into the future? In Ohio, a man predicts a horrific plane crash before it happens. Can nightmares become reality?
Nothing is beyond the realm of possibility.
In Washington State, a child's intuition saves his family from a deadly volcanic eruption.
I said, if we were over there, we'd be dead now.
Can our subconscious predict natural disasters? And in California, a man foretells the Hurricane Katrina disaster with uncanny accuracy.
I could have helped many people.
Is he the new Nostradamus?
Yeah, it's a weird world, and I love it. Dreams. We all have them, right? Oh, I'm not talking about our hopes and ambitions. I mean those fantastic journeys we have in our sleep every night when our subconscious minds take us to places where anything's possible. But what exactly are dreams? Are they reflections of our inner souls? And if so, what are they trying to tell us? And more importantly, should we listen to them? Some dreams are so powerful, they seem real until you wake up the next morning. But what if one day you woke up to find your dream was not only real, it killed 273 people?
Cincinnati, Ohio, 1979. David Booth is the office manager of a car rental agency at Cincinnati Airport, and a low-key kind of guy, according to his best friend, Wayne Green.
Well, Dave kept to himself most of the time, and I didn't see him really getting out and meeting people and doing things.
But on May 15th, David's life takes a dark turn. He begins having extreme nightmares.
He had this dream of an airplane taking off and an engine falling off and the plane crashing in flames, killing everybody.
The dream is eerily real.
It was a disturbing dream. And then the next night, he had the same dream again, and that was strange.
The dreadful details are seared into David's memory. A silver American Airlines plane with one engine in the tail takes off from a busy airport. But then disaster strikes. The jet flips upside down and plummets to Earth. It narrowly misses a low building before slamming into an open field.
Let's say you have the same dream night after night of some catastrophe. The first night, fine, that's a night terror. The second night, wow, what's this?
But the nightmare doesn't stop. It continues night after night. David has a terrifying realization. His visions are more than just night terrors.
He felt that it was prophecy for him to see that over and over like that. There's a reason why I'm getting these dreams. I've got to do something.
Finally, David decides to warn the authorities. He contacts Jack Barker, the public affairs officer with the Federal Aviation Administration.
David Booth sounded perfectly rational, saying he wasn't, crazy like some people sound. He was upset about the dream, but other than that, it was calm. He was the first person I ever talked to, in fact, the only person I ever talked to, who talked about an accident before it happened.
David's glad someone is listening, but his relief is short-lived.
He was a pleasant person to talk to, but there was nothing to take seriously. No city, no flight number, nothing relating directly to the accident other than a description of what happened.
David's information isn't enough for the FAA to take action. But it's not over for David. The nightmare returns again and again, each night more vivid than the last. And by May 25th, 1979, David is desperate.
When it persisted, then he became alarmed and said, I've got to do something. He called the FAA again.
He says, it's just very disturbing. I don't know what to do. I said, well, I don't either. The only thing that could have been done would be to ground American Airlines. And, I mean, you're going to ground American Airlines because somebody had a dream? I think not.
Just a few hours later at Chicago O'Hare International Airport, David's nightmare becomes a tragic reality.
Just exactly as he had envisioned it. Flight 191 suddenly crashed. The engine fell off the plane. It was the worst airplane crash that they'd had.
273 people killed with no survivors. Booth can't believe it. His dream has played out in real life.
Dave immediately heard about it from all the news flashes because it was on the television and the radio.
At the FAA, the horrific news reaches Jack Barker.
When the accident occurred, which was later that same day he called a second time, I got very busy answering press questions about the accident, which was my normal job. And I was into it for about 30 or 40 minutes or so, and then my secretary stepped in and she says, the guy from Cincinnati that called. Everything he said was in detail. And I said, yeah, that's pretty much what he described. Silver American Airlines airplane with an engine in the tail, a DC-10, crashed right after takeoff. Crashes inverted like this, about halfway, in an open field after it passes over a low building. Well, that's what happened.
According to Barker, Booth's premonition is the only one the FAA ever recorded before an incident took place.
You see, I've been involved in a lot of strange incidents, accidents, hijackings, etc. This thing with David Booth is probably the strangest of anything I ever handled.
The tragedy would haunt David Booth until he died in 2011.
Dave never really discussed his feelings after the crash. If the word had been able to get out as to what airport was involved, it could have saved a lot of lives.
This is a tragedy on so many levels, not only for the people that died, but for Jack Barker and David Booth. There seems to be no question that David clearly saw, not once, but many times, the exact details of an airline crash in his dreams, weeks before the actual event took place. Surely this is undeniable evidence of a genuine premonition. David Booth saw into the future. But how on earth did he do it?
Did David Booth predict the worst air accident in U.S. history? Can dreams reveal the future? Physician Larry Dossey has studied premonitions for over 30 years. He's convinced David's vision was real.
If you add up all of the things that he got right, he identified it as a silver airplane. He identified the actual carrier. He essentially identified the make of the plane. He identified the fact that it would crash shortly after takeoff, inverted, which happened, in a field, which also proved to be true.
Dr. Dossey not only thinks predictive dreams are commonplace, but they're an ancient biological mechanism unique to humans.
Most people who do serious work in this field of premonitions think that this ability probably developed very early on in the evolution of human beings. You can imagine if our ancestors were able to know ahead of time that there was a lion in the bush, they could take measures to avoid it and be more likely to survive and procreate. It is likely that this survival mechanism might have been passed on through succeeding generations. because it had what biologists call survival value.
Dr. Dossi believes it's significant David's premonition came to him during sleep.
Well, the more dramatic premonitions tend to occur in dreams. If you're conscious, you're going to get into incessant arguments with yourself. Can this happen? Should it happen? Am I hallucinating? But when we're asleep, we don't have those sorts of prohibitions.
But if humans can foresee events, why don't we hear about them more often?
We don't really know how common these dream premonitions are because there's a taboo on reporting them. Besides that, you would want to know if you were going to report this to the FAA, what's the likelihood that they'd do anything about it? It's virtually zero, as was the case in David Booth's experience with the FAA. So I think most people who have these dreams just say to themselves, what's the use? I think this needs to be reversed. I'll bet you David Booth was not the only person who had vivid dream of the crash of that flight.
Did David Booth use a hidden evolutionary tool to foretell the crash of Flight 191? Or is the explanation more sinister?
Nothing is beyond the realm of possibility.
A man sees an air disaster in his dreams before it happens. Did he predict the future? Richard Syrett is host of The Conspiracy Show.
I don't discount the very real possibility that there are such people that have this gift of premonition or extrasensory perception. But I don't believe, in this case, David Booth had this prophecy or this premonition.
He agrees David Booth knew about the accident before it happened, but not because he saw it in his dreams. Syrett thinks David is part of a deadly CIA conspiracy.
David Booth was an asset with an intelligence group as part of what's known as the counterintelligence program, which has been in operation by the FBI and the CIA for probably 50, 60, 70 years.
The CIA wanted to establish David Booth as a psychic in the eyes of the public.
What the counterintelligence programs do is to create someone as a straw man, someone that people can believe in, listen to, pay attention to.
But why? To distract attention from what was really going on. Syrett believes the CIA sabotaged Flight 191 in order to kill one of its passengers.
It's a very convenient, a very efficient way to take somebody out because you have the cover story of this air disaster. Who would believe that the CIA or some intelligence group would kill innocent victims in order to take out one person aboard that plane? If you look at the passenger list of Flight 191, who do we have on there? We had a lot of people who belong to book publishers. They're on their way to a major book fair in LA at the time. Hard to say. There could have been someone there, perhaps. Judith Wax, here's another interesting point. Judith Wax, who was a humorist and a writer, she worked for Playboy magazine, among others. And that year, in 1979, she published a book. On page 191 of that book, she expressed her fear of flying. I've been covering conspiracies for nearly 20 years, and if there's one thing I've learned, nothing is beyond the realm of possibility.
We may never know the full truth about David Booth and Flight 191.
You can call it a conspiracy. I simply call it spycraft. This is the way these intelligence groups work.
Are David Booth's dreams just a cover story? Aviation expert David Parker Brown thinks there's nothing mysterious about David Booth's predictions, and that almost anyone could have done the same thing.
Tragedies like airline crashes are something that people dream about quite a bit. There are going to be a little bit fewer that are going to report those, and the fact that one will end up lining up within the history of airliners flying is a chance that's probably going to happen sooner or later.
Parker Brown is convinced every element of David's dreams represent common features of aircraft accidents at the time.
In 1979, when this accident occurred, a little over half of all American jet airliners had a third engine on the tail. And from the early 70s to the late 70s, the DC-10 did not have a stellar safety record, and they was involved in 11 different accidents.
But David Booth also predicted the color of the plane and the time of the crash. How?
Back in 1979, there were quite a few airlines that had silver airline liveries. American Airlines had all their planes painted in silver since the 1930s. And takeoff is one of the most dangerous parts of an airline flight. And so it's most likely that people are going to have a dream about an airliner crashing during takeoff. Since we haven't seen another case like this where it's been substantiated that he had the dream beforehand since 1979, makes it very unlikely that this was just anything more than a coincidence.
So if the dream merely described a typical airline crash, does that mean David's prediction was a completely random occurrence? Not entirely. David did get one thing right.
The aircraft took off and rolled over and crashed into a field. The rollover is not very common in accidents. For David Booth, this is one piece of evidence that does come up to seem a little odd, and the fact that he did see that probably is one reason why we're talking about this today.
Were David Booth's dreams just dreams? Or was he part of a sinister CIA propaganda program? Or did he really see into the future after all? Where to what? A 7-year-old warns his father of an imminent disaster.
It was something that felt evil.
Have you ever had a gut feeling? Unfortunately, these days, most of mine are dietary-based, but you know what I'm talking about. Those feelings we get in the pit of our stomachs when something isn't quite right. It might be something small, like crossing a road or avoiding a stranger. Or it might be something huge. So huge, it could move an entire mountain.
May 17th, 1980, the Cascade Mountains, Washington State. Aspiring nature photographer Steve Terrell is on his first assignment to capture the growing volcanic activity on Mount St. Helens. And Steve's editor is looking for spectacular pictures.
He said, first assignment I want you to do is Mount St. Helens. I go, what do you mean? He said, something's gonna happen because that mountain, it's bulging 3 feet a day. So something's gotta give.
But after 6 uneventful weekends staking out the mountain, Steve's hopes are beginning to fade.
I have to admit, I was getting tired. I was getting sick of looking at a mountain. So I said, this is gonna be the last weekend.
With him on this final trip is his 7-year-old son, Steve Jr.
I remember traveling up there with my dad a lot. He was hoping something was gonna happen, but none of us knew the magnitude it was gonna happen.
Their destination is Spirit Lake, just 5 kilometers from the bulging north face of the mountain, well inside the danger zone. The area has been cordoned off by state authorities, but Steve has found a way around the roadblocks.
He had met a logger up there. My dad had spent numerous days up there traveling back roads with this logger, showing him how to get around all the roadblocks.
Finally, they arrive, and the view is perfect.
I thought, oh, this is gonna be gorgeous. The morning light's gonna hit this, it's gonna be stunning.
But just as Steve is setting up camp, he notices something is wrong with his son. Steve Jr. has suddenly fallen ill, but it's like nothing he's ever felt before.
It was something that felt evil. I call it gut instinct because that's what I call it when something doesn't feel right. This was just a gut instinct times a million. I just told my dad, Dad, let's leave. I don't want to be here. I didn't like it. It was like evil.
He said, I don't want to stay here. I don't want it. I don't like this.
I literally started crying and throwing a little fit.
Unable to calm his son, Steve is left with no choice. He has to move camp.
He wasn't happy at all, I must say. He packed up the tent and he was cursing and mad, and we left it.
They drive to Yale Lake, on the opposite side of the volcano.
When we got down to Yale Lake, everything felt fine. But I remember being kind of like distraught that my dad was so upset.
Early the next morning, Steve is packing up his camera gear. Suddenly, he hears a terrifying rumble. Mount St. Helens erupts with a force 1,500 times more powerful than the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima. It sends a massive plume of hot ash 20 kilometers into the sky.
I turned around and like, oh, the mountain's erupting. And I am now screaming at my son, get your ass out of bed. I said, Mount St. Helens is erupting.
It was just massive. It looked like a mountain on top of a mountain.
Wasting no time, Steve picks up his camera and starts shooting. He's getting historic stuff. But he can't help but think how much better the view was at Spirit Lake. And he lets his son know.
I could have been over there photographing at Spirit Lake. You've made me lose $1 million shot. I am so damn I'm so mad. I'm so mad.
He was cussing and everything else. He was very upset. I can't believe that we're not up there.
Steve decides to head back over to Spirit Lake to get a better angle on the eruption. But they get some devastating news.
Spirit Lake has been completely decimated following the massive eruption of Mount St. Helens.
I turned on the radio, and they said, we have reports. First reports coming in is Spirit Lake is gone.
The area where Steve and his son first set up camp has been utterly destroyed, submerged by the largest landslide ever recorded.
It buried Spirit Lake with 30 feet of mud and ash. And I'm thinking, my God.
Steve comes to a sobering realization. Had Steve Jr. not convinced him to leave, they would both be dead, along with the 57 people who died in the eruption.
I looked down at my son. I said, how'd you know? I go, Stevie, you got us out of there. I said, if we were over there, we'd be dead now.
My dad gave me the biggest hug he's ever gave me. And he said that Spirit Lake was destroyed. And we would have been dead.
I don't know, it was like, I still to this day don't know what happened, why he told us to get out of there, why he didn't want to be there. So the rest of the day, we stayed up, hid from everybody, photographed all from these ridges and West Point Peak. We ended up at West Point Peak, a really nice view there. Photographed all day long. So I had my 4x5, had a little 35 millimeter. And a side note, I don't know if he told you this or not, I like to brag about my son. I had my 4x5 set up when I was photographing and stuff, you know, the mountain. And I was trying to teach him how to photo. I want him to follow my steps, you know, so he asked me if he could use a small camera, you know, the little camera. I said, sure, you can use it, you know, and I put it on a tripod for him and stuff. And so he's dilly-dallying out there, you know, shooting and stuff. And he's got this camera, you know, and he's got it on a tripod. He goes, Dad, come here, look at this. And I look at it, oh boy. So he's got the camera on a vertical, but it's crooked. Now, this is important to tell you. It was crooked. So I straightened it out a little bit for him. I said, see that horizon line? You got to straighten that out a little bit. Long story short, turned in all the film. I'm just getting really fast, turned in all the film. And that little son of a gun, he, at 7.5 years old, got a cover of a magazine.
To this day, Steve Jr. can't explain how he knew they were in mortal danger.
It was like a higher power or something, I don't know. I've never experienced it again, but that was just something that I can't explain it.
Was Steve Jr.'s gut feeling a genuine premonition? Or was his intuition just a lucky break? Clairvoyant and nature guide Laura Eisenhower says chance had nothing to do with it. She's convinced Steve Jr. did something truly extraordinary that day.
Steve Jr. was communicating with nature very much in a sense like an animal. He was used to the mountain, he understood the energies. That's how he knew that the eruption was going to happen.
Can it be? Did the boy actually tap into some animalistic sixth sense?
Animals naturally respond to impending disaster. They flee, they go to hilltops. Very often in disasters, there aren't a lot of animals that die. There are a lot of humans that die. Animals know exactly what to do. Steve Jr., because he had spent time on the mountain, was already in touch with the energies. So if something was shifting, he could immediately notice.
How does a child summon this animal ability? Simple, says Eisenhower. Just listen to nature.
Nature is always trying to protect us if we're able to listen. It wants to guide us and protect us, and if we're tuned into it, we're always on a safe course.
But where did this amazing power come from? The answer could lie in the blueprint of every human life.
We all have this ability. It's in our DNA. Nature is always trying to communicate with humans in the sense that we are children of the earth. Receiving communication from nature is just as natural as feeling hungry. We can't escape the fact that we are in the natural world, even if we're in cities. I myself was in wilderness expedition leadership training, and I was in incredible communication with nature. One can tell where to camp, where not to camp, how to communicate with animals in order to protect themselves, because we communicate based on senses, intuition, and energy, not verbal communication. And so, absolutely, humans can communicate with nature. I once swam with a dolphin pod that took me so far away from the boat, and I asked them to take me back to the boat because the slipstream is what enables you to go fast with the dolphins. And instead of continuing on, they turned around and took me all the way back to the boat, and all I sent was a message to get me back, or else I wouldn't have been able to get back. We find that with domestic animals, of course, there's always a deep connection and relationship and communication, and birds and all animals. And as we evolve, we need to be in communication with nature because there's going to be a lot of shifts and earth changes.
If this is the case, why aren't stories like Steve Jr.'s more common?
We've lost a certain level of connection that forces us to adapt to a human way rather than a natural way of being. Our cities aren't in compatibility with nature, and nature wants to communicate to us that it's, in a sense, our mother, and it requires a certain level of respect.
Nature, it's awesome, isn't it? I mean, can it communicate with us? I'm sure of it.
Ouch, you clumsy fool.
Oh, sorry. I mean, I love my trees. I nurture them, I respect them.
You never water us. That's why we're dying.
Oh, stop. I give them love and affection.
Get your hands off, weirdo.
Will you quit it? Mwah.
Oh my God, I'm gonna throw up.
I'm sorry.
Did Steve Jr. tap into some long-dormant animal sense? Did he somehow pick up warning signals Mount St. Helens was about to erupt? Or is there a more rational explanation?
I don't believe that the volcano was speaking directly to Steve Jr.
A 7-year-old boy is overpowered by a feeling near Mount St. Helens, just in time to save himself and his father from a killer volcano.
Spirit Lake has been completely decimated.
Are premonitions real? Psychologist Dr. Michael Brustein doesn't think Steve Jr. knew the eruption was going to happen.
People can't predict the future, unfortunately. It would be great if they could, but that's not the case.
In his eyes, something extraordinary did happen that day, but it had nothing to do with Steve Jr. possessing extrasensory abilities.
The gut feeling that Steve Terrell says he had about the campsite, it does not provide any evidence of a capacity to read into the future. What it says is that he was anxious about something. Something at the site scared him, and people after the fact are making the association that he predicted something happened.
For Dr. Brustein, unlocking the mystery starts with Steve Jr.'s gut feeling.
Gut feelings exist, but they're not supernatural. Gut feelings are a physical response that someone has after they perceive something is dangerous. The heart starts racing, the breathing gets faster, the blood gets distributed away from the stomach into some other major organs, so you get that nauseous feeling. It's getting the body prepared for that flight or fight response to deal with that danger. It's that simple.
Was Steve Jr.'s reaction just a normal physical response to some danger? What could have scared him?
I think he was scared about something that he saw at the site. Kids are very volatile and they get upset about many different things. It could have been a spider, it could have been a rock, but I think the anxiety was not about what he thought was going to happen in the future, but something that might have happened at the site right then and there.
Did Steve Jr. simply see something in the woods? Or was he recalling some earlier childhood trauma? Maybe. But why is Steve Jr. and so many others convinced he knew the volcano was about to erupt?
I think people are drawn to supernatural explanations to understand things is because it brings a sense of comfort. It makes us think that there's something out there besides us that's functioning in the world. And people like that comfort. To a certain extent, it's gives people the idea that maybe if we leave this earth, there's something else out there that could be there for us. And I think people really like to believe that. It's really nice to think that maybe there's something out there. Maybe there's another universe, or maybe there's some sort of magical thing happening. And it gives people hope and about their future.
Was it pure chance that Steve Jr. had a gut reaction to the mountain? Is precognition a figment of our imagination? Clinical hypnotherapist Paul Arand thinks the answer lies with reincarnation.
Whether we realize it or not, we are all reincarnated beings. Reincarnation is a process the soul goes through of going into and out of various bodies. Our past life experiences influence the decisions we make, how we live our life, even our emotions.
Arand's idea is that the boy sensed the eruption before it happened, long before.
Often at the death scene in the past life, the soul makes a choice, a decision about something to do next time they come. So someone I worked with recently that has an anxiety disorder, who was killed in the past life because she felt she didn't pay enough attention to the dangerous situation around her, came back with a determination to always be super alert, hypervigilant. And that was having a really negative impact on her life here now, because she lives in a relatively safe environment. Steve Jr. died in a volcanic explosion in his past life, and his soul came in with great determination to do it different this time. Not only survive, but to save his father's life. If someone died in the volcanic explosion in Pompeii, that soul would then reincarnate with an intention to avoid that sort of thing, or to do something different next time around, either to assist someone they were unable to assist or to avoid the disaster altogether.
Recalling the deadly past life lesson, Steve Jr. wasn't about to make the same mistake twice.
He listened to his intuition. He didn't let his intellect override it or his father's questioning his feelings. He stuck to it, and he made that known so that the action was taken that saved his life.
Could Steve Jr. really be a reincarnated soul?
Up until around the age of 7, children have very vivid past life recall. Young people are generally more in touch with their soul or their spiritual self, and they haven't shifted from trusting their intuition into relying solely on their intellect.
Do we learn from our past lives? Or does Mother Nature tell us when disasters are imminent?
Spirit Lake has been completely decimated.
Whatever the truth is, it's weird. Or what? A man predicts Hurricane Katrina, 9/11, and the Columbia shuttle disaster. Can the man claiming to be the new Nostradamus really foretell the future?
I could have helped many people.
You know, I love astrology, so I'm going to give you a quick lesson in it, so pay close attention. I'm an Aries, first sign of the zodiac, which spans the 0 degree and the 29th degree of the celestial longitude. The sun enters Aries when it reaches the northern vernal equinox around March 21st each year. Got it so far? Aries represent a strong creative thrust and the traits of competitiveness, impulsiveness, rashness, arrogance, and the instinct to act spontaneously. Ah! It's me, right? See, here's my stars for today. Sometimes events unfold as planned. However, what's least unexpected could prove most worthwhile. Amazing, huh? How do they know this stuff? And should we really take notice? Let me tell you, I think we should.
Pont Saint-Esprit, France, 1965. It's the hometown of Dr. Louis Turi, and the place where a bizarre incident would set his life on a remarkable path. Louis is 15 years old and staying with his grandmother, Rachel de Rollo. In the middle of the night, he's awakened by a sound. Downstairs, he is surprised to see his grandma dressing and disappearing into the dark.
I instinctively knew that there was something I had to investigate.
Louis follows her. At a clearing deep in the woods, he discovers the old lady looking to the heavens through a sextant.
I was mesmerized to look at her.
As Louis comes out of his hiding place, his grandmother has a message for him.
She was telling me the stars are more than dead rock hanging out there for the sake of beauty. God gave us the stars to be used as sign so we may live a more productive life. My grandmother was very spiritual. She was very psychic. And she always told me the connection between the moon and growing vegetables. I was mesmerized to look at her, pointing out the constellation. Because I was always asking her, what's that? What's this? What is this, Grandma? She was not an astronomer or an astrophysicist. She had no education, but she had a phenomenal intuition. I realized that reading tea leaves and the tarot cards, astrology, it is part of my background. That's how it all started.
It is Louis' initiation into the mysterious world of astrology.
As I grew up and started to investigate the stars in a different level, I realized that in the stars there is a spirit, and this spirit has something that affects the human psyche.
Louis discovers an inspirational book written by a 16th century French sage, Michel de Nostradamus, known to the world as Nostradamus.
I was born, like him, in Provence, France, under the same stars. His predictions of the French king dying of an accident, Hitler, and every major news is there for people to translate. And then I couldn't help myself to dig into Nostradamus' work. I literally painted my entire house with symbols of astrology.
Nostradamus' unique method fascinates Louis. Known as divine astrology or astropsychology, it combines regular astrology with extrasensory perception.
Astrology is not a pseudoscience. Astrology is a real science. Astropsychology or divine astrology allows you to use what you call the third eye. It takes many, many years of investigation. It is not something that happened overnight. But I was downloaded the entire secret of the cosmic code.
Learning the secrets of divine astrology has given him incredible powers of prediction.
I have been called the new Nostradamus, the modern day Nostradamus. I have been called CNN before CNN.
Louis begins publishing his own predictions, often highly detailed, but few people pay attention to his prophecies. That is, until June 15th, 2005.
I was on Coast to Coast Radio, which is the biggest radio show that you have in the United States. And I told him to be ready for nature devastating forces that could produce a hurricane that would displace thousands upon thousands of people.
Crucially, Dr. Turi tells listeners the next natural disaster would occur August 29th, 2005. But nobody listened. Hurricane Katrina devastated New Orleans, killing over 1,800 people and causing $81 billion in damage. It happened on August 29, 2005, exactly as Louis predicted.
Oh my God. I was very upset because I could have allowed all these people to take measures before the hurricane strike. I could have helped many people. They did not see the signs.
But that was no one-off. Louis also predicted the 9/11 attacks, the Columbia shuttle disaster, and other world events with uncanny accuracy.
People start to realize, well, wait a minute, these guys are something real. I teach the spiritual values of those stars. So what happened is we have developed so much technological advance. GPS, we go on the moon, the internet, on the physical level, humanity is up here, but in the spiritual, we are still 2,000 years ago. Because the laws of the divine, the face and the tools of God, the ministry of Jesus was not taken care properly. So what I'm trying to do is to bring back the balance between the physical and the spiritual values and help the scientists to think outside of the box. Because what you don't see, what you don't hear, doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It's time to think in a different way. Like Einstein said, we have created a huge monster of scientific, rational, logical thought where the gift is gone. And all I'm trying to do is to bring it back to humanity. And I'm gonna do it.
Do the heavens hold the key to our fate? Has Dr. Louis Turi rediscovered a secret method to predict the future? Or is there something else going on? Amateur historian Don Depler has a radical explanation for Dr. Turi's power.
Astrology can be used to understand the future. That's true. However, Dr. Turi is not the reincarnation of Nostradamus.
So how is Dr. Turi able to make such accurate predictions?
He may have been involved in what we call gray ops, which are programs hidden behind black ops programs. Black ops are nuclear secrets, atomic weapons, national security. Gray ops have to do with preparation for the coming cataclysms.
Depler's theory is that Dr. Turi is seeing the future with his very own eyes. But how?
What he is a person with access to alien technology that allows him to see events in our future.
Depler believes Dr. Turi is using a device codenamed the Looking Glass.
It was supposedly first based at the engine disassembly plant somewhere near Area 51 in Nevada. The Looking Glass is a long tube about 60 feet long, 12 feet in diameter, into which is pumped a lot of different gases. And in the other end of the device was a railgun and a 12-inch thick plate of glass into which the railgun was fired. It's got electromagnetics that spin in opposite directions, and technicians see various future events with this thing.
How did Dr. Turi get access to the Looking Glass? Through a powerful and secret government group known as Majestic 12.
Majestic 12 is the organization that pretty much runs all of the alien-related projects, and they keep that from the public. They maintain the cover-up. Majestic 12 is a party supposedly on the behalf of humanity at alien treaties. The conferences are known as the Tau 9 Treaty Conference for the Preservation of Humanity. They're the people that really run things in our world today. People that run finance, the military, science, medicine, including the intelligence agencies.
It's a controversial theory with global implications. Could it be true? Depler speculates that even though Turi's predictions may have come from a shadowy, classified project, he himself might be doing beneficial work.
The government has a vested interest in the public not learning too much about how things really work because of the panic that could ensue. If they were to tell the public the truth, a lot of people wouldn't be buying 30-year mortgages or even 4-year car notes. The truth is coming out in ways you won't find in the mass media. And in that sense, Dr. Turi is doing a good thing because he is trying to do what he can to help people understand and to prepare them for future cataclysmic events that we're about to undergo.
You know, just about every time there's something weird going on, the poor old CIA gets the blame. But this is something new. The Majestic 12. Who are they? Why are they majestic? And most importantly, are they paying their fair share of taxes? God, I hate cover-ups.
Could the Looking Glass exist? Can we build a machine that can project images of the future? Or is the answer more down to earth?
Anybody can predict the future. The question is, can you do it well?
A man claims he can look into the future. Are prophecies real? Dr. Hansen is a professor of economics at George Mason University. He thinks he knows exactly how Dr. Turi does it.
Anybody can predict the future. The question is, can you do it well? So, I believe Dr. Turi can predict the future. I don't believe he can do it well. So what does it mean to predict something well? Well, first of all, what's one standard? The lowest possible standard of prediction is better than absolute random chance, right? Well, anybody can predict the sun is going to come up the next day better than random chance. In fact, you can predict it 99.999% confidence because, in fact, every day the sun comes right up again on schedule, and we can all predict that. So we can all predict far better than chance. The point is, it's not very hard to do that. To predict well means to predict better than some other source. Interesting sources of predictions are sources that can tell us things that other sources can't tell us very well. That means to predict well, you need to predict more accurately than other sources. So I don't believe that Dr. Turi can predict more accurately than other sources, although I do believe he could predict better than random chance because we can all predict better than random chance. It looks to me like Dr. Turi is taking advantage of his customers.
The professor says Dr. Turi's seemingly accurate predictions aren't cosmic, but the result of something known as selection bias.
Selection bias is where you pick one small set of things out of a bigger set, and you just show me the small set, and you don't show me the bigger set. So, you know, if I'm gonna tell you I'm a great athlete, I'll tell you about the times when I shot from 50 feet away and went right in. I don't tell you about the 50 other times I shot and it didn't go in. Selection bias is telling you about part of, but not all of what happened.
Hansen suspects Dr. Turi's method of publishing his predictions almost guarantees some of them will be correct.
Just picking one point and saying, on February 1st, 2003, I predicted something bad would happen and then it happened, that's just not very persuasive. Dr. Turi is trying to find the most favorable match with what happened and what he said. They get you to think they know something because they point out their successes without showing you their failures.
So if Dr. Turi could do it, can we?
We're actually in an age of a revolution of using statistics to collect large data sets and make forecasts using sophisticated statistics and computer programs in remarkable ways that people with their intuitions are often much worse at. This is revolutionizing business, it's revolutionizing academia. This is an exciting era of new and more accurate forecasts. It's just a shame to even be distracted by people sort of making up stuff and throwing tea leaves about without them even bothering to collect a track record, because with these big data sets and careful statistical methods, they have shown remarkable ability to forecast a lot of interesting things.
Is Dr. Turi's amazing power of prediction nothing more than a numbers game? Let's find out. Dr. Turi has agreed to demonstrate his ability.
About a week ago, I was asked to make some specific predictions. So I'm going to read them to you and at the same time point out that those predictions came to pass. The first one will be to expect news with earthquake above 6.0. 2 earthquakes took place. One was 6.3 and the other one was 6.2. I mentioned tornado. Today we had devastating tornado that killed people in the United States. I also mentioned to expect scientific news from the cosmos, and today we had the biggest solar flare ever took place. Number 4 was to expect shocking news and very large explosion in the Middle East. Yesterday, over 150 people were killed in an explosion in the Middle East. Out of the 5 predictions that I gave, 4 came to pass. You can investigate, you can check. They all transpired, as I said it would a week ago. And that's what makes the difference between divine information and pure imagination.
Can Dr. Turi really see into the future by deciphering a secret code hidden in the cosmos? Does he have access to an alien telescope? Or is he just playing the law of percentages? Weird or what? So there we have it, 3 stories of uncanny predictions. A man foretells a horrific plane crash in Chicago. Can we harness dreams and discover what's before us? A child saves himself and his father from a volcanic eruption. Can our subconscious predict natural disasters? And a modern-day Nostradamus predicts Hurricane Katrina, 9/11, and the Columbia shuttle disaster. Is he using secret technology to see events before they happen? You decide.
Join me next time for more stories that will undoubtedly be weird, or what?